Fred Austin came to Alaska from Washington State in the middle 60s. Uh, had no relation to pipeline or anything. We just came up here to live here. Went to Anchorage first, lived there a couple of years. When the pipeline project started, which was the road first, then I went to work for Lynden, and our run was from Beaver Creek, because North Road was not open yet, wasn't built, from Beaver Creek in the Yukon Territory to mostly to the airport here. It was put on airplanes and flown them. And the reason we went to Yukon to live was there was housing available. There was no housing available here for us. A camper off of a pickup set in the backyard would rent for $450 a month. Yeah, we had 6 kids, so we found a place to live there, so we went down and lived there a couple of years. Then we moved back into Alaska again, lived in Tok for a year. All this time I've been trucking, driving the truck as an owner-operator, not as a company driver. Oh, right, it was simply not available. And then when you look at the house you need for that big amount of people. When we were living in Tok, and then the dispatch, line dispatch job came open, and I took that on the condition, and that's from Fairbanks, on the condition that the company would provide the housing. At that same time, there was a family up here of 6 who decided to leave. That house became available. So, whappo, here I am, dispatched for 2 years. The housing was available, and I live it to this day, 50 years later.
That's amazing.
That house, by the way, was a part of a barracks off of Eielson. It was built in 1942 to 1944. Not exactly a winter house at that time. Well, after my sojourn in the office, after 2 years in there, and it just wasn't my bag, and I knew it, so went back on it. I kept the truck behind the woodshed all those years, and broke it out. Started running, everything was north in those days. That haul road was built out of whatever there was available on the side. There was no crush, nothing like that on it. If it was by a river, you were driving on river rock. If it was by a mountain, you were driving on the sharp rock slides off the mountain. Everything slow, lots of flat tires. Heads-up driving, you had to be a heads-up driver. I did flop a truck one time on its right side, just 50 miles out of town, narrow, crooked road. I had a 16-foot wide load and met some traffic. It fell over and got onto overplow. And overplow is when the blades will plow the snow out farther than the road is. You can't tell you're not on the road. You're just, and I put a front wheel off in there. Eventually we end up flopping on the right side. No damage, blocked everything. There was a big service truck out of Prudhoe. That was an oil company type truck, a winch truck. Rolled me back on my feet, but while I was laying over, an amusing thing happened. Then got my door open. I'm walking on the side of my truck, which is then facing up. I stepped over on the steering wheel, and that didn't hold still. It just spun and dropped me on my head down in the snow. So that's how I exited the truck. You don't always think just right when you're doing stuff. You want your heaters working good. You're going to be cold part of the time. You got to live with that. You carry everything you're going to want to eat. You get real handy with peanut butter. So that, and take care of your truck to see that it keeps going. But breakdowns are going to happen. When a breakdown in those early years would happen, trucks didn't go zooming by, they stopped. And in a few minutes' time, there was a lot of traffic in those days, you would have a half a dozen trucks stopped. In that half a dozen trucks with the drivers might have 150 years of experience. And between the collected tools and parts we all carried, you were pretty well set. You could survive a pretty bad breakdown. And quite a few of us experienced that. It's a different world up there now. People don't stop like they used to. It used to be a lot of commodity. Once trucks left town, they didn't have color anymore. You're all in the same boat. You paid attention to all that. You paid attention to it. Uh, you pay attention to the wind, where it's coming from. You park the right way to help keep the temperature up. One of the things my wife and I are both ham operators, amateur radio, and I had an amateur radio in my truck, and I would been driving on the Arctic Ocean out on the ice to drill rigs, talking to a friend in Antarctica. So there was some of that kind of stuff going on too. So, we all think of work, 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 and had the hammering we took. Well, there were some fun times too, and there were lots of animals in the beginning. One particular time, a wolf running down the road right next to me, just loping along, having a great time. We ran probably a half a kilometer together, and then that wolf took a great, huge leap out in the deep snow and just wallowed around. They have great fun with this. The animals aren't there now like they used to be, but them and bears. Particular bear that you had to watch for the most was polar bear, because they'll hunt you. And they up north, they aren't farther down the south. But if you have a problem up there, be aware. Be aware of the grizzly too. But I have come out of one of the camps with a lunch. You carried 2 lunches. One you'd give the bear that lived on the steppes. You literally stepped, these are black bears here, up by the Yukon, literally stepped over the bear to get out, and you had to, walking out to your truck, we had a narrow road to walk out. We had banks on both sides. Black bears would hang out on the tops of those banks. So you'd use that extra lunch you had to bribe the bears to let you go through. It was slow going in the beginning because the road had no surfacing other than what it was put together with, river rock, mountain rock. Gradually, this come up, they started crushing rock. This is Alyeskiet, this is not state. Crushing, maintaining the road, it kept getting better and better, but it's a slow go. You didn't drive 50 miles an hour up there. And by the time the road and the pipeline was built, the road had gotten in pretty good shape. Alyeska did a good job of maintaining it. And then we had to have a new learning curve when the state took it over. But I think probably the management in the state had some economic learning curve to do too, because everything's more costly. Farther north you go, the more it costs. Basic truck is the same as it was since I was a child. An engine, usually 6 cylinders, But the trucks evolved, the rubber, better tires made a world of difference. Better lube, the chemists made better lubrication, made a world of difference. Better actual chemics that work making the metal and vetting, that was a test bed for all that. And it got better. Everything about trucking got better. Better heaters, better everything. So that was a real test bed for developing today's truck. You use what you got and you make it work. I don't know how you would say favorite moments, because there's range from, oh my goodness, why did that happen, to hooray, something great happened. So no one particular thing that's really high. Because we've seen it all the way from super to bloody. It's 50 years of this kind of lifestyle. Management, the ownership and the management, people that own this company, they managed long term, not for the big profits of the moment. We also, all of us that were at Lynden, were offered bigger money to go to work for other companies. All the decisions I made were long term. It's great to have a steady diet of steaks, but it's not real. It's nice to be in a spot where you are pretty well going to leave a hamburger a day with occasional steak. I always thought long term. So did Lynden. That's why they managed the way they did. They're here, them and their affiliates. Lynden has many other things going on. All of them have been managed long term, where most of the trucking companies up here for the big bucks and be gone, and they're gone. They didn't survive. They didn't survive more than minutes after the pipeline was done. They were just after the big bucks and it's over. And the people that chased over there to make the big bucks, their jobs disappeared. No, there's been a lot of people over the course of time. I would take an offhand guess and say our terminal during that time had at least 50 trucks running out of it. And I spent 2 years in there dispatching. There would be 50 trucks out of Anchorage, 50 trucks on the road coming out of the States. The ships that we now get stuff on were not running. That hadn't been invented yet. That happened during the pipeline with Sealand. They started bringing freight up. And then they developed a ship to bring these cans, in Canadian terms, sea cans up here. And this all happened during that period of time. The people left for the most part. Alaska is a place in the north, same thing in northern Canada. You either love it and you stay and you put up with it, or you hate it and you get out. In most areas in the world, you were born there, for some reason you live there. They're gray areas. There's no love or hate either way. It's just a place to be. Not so here. You either love it and live it, or you get out. Probably the people. Yeah, there's probably 8 people out of 500,000 that live here that like 80 below. But the people's general attitude, and it's held. It's not as strong as it was 50 years ago, but it's still here. You're not here just to take up space. You actually live here. Fairbanks was one crowded, busy little town 24 hours a day. Money drives that, no matter whether it's here or anywhere else. Money drives that 24-hour-a-day business. Van Horn Road right here, there was a narrow road. It was there 50 years ago, and there was one house on that road. One, on one side of the road. Now look at Van Horn Road. It's things you couldn't envision happening. But none of us understood big money and what it's doing. It dazzles you how much money got spent and how fast things happen when that kind of money's up there. You didn't have a concept of that. If you had $13.72, you felt great in those early days. Yeah, there's a world of difference. Well, it's a different world than it was 50 years ago. You carried a toolbox and parts and pieces with you. Now, there was a period of time you carried a quarter for a telephone. Now you carry a pair of gloves and your smartphone. And you don't worry about a toolbox. If you're that type and you want to drive, go outside somewhere. Go to the States. If you want to be up here, learn some of the old-time techniques of take care of things, learn how to fix stuff on the road. Because a trip out for a mechanic 400 miles, and that can eat your lunch. So, no, I wouldn't recommend it unless your personality is one that can-do type. And you better want to do it, because there's a price to that. It's not free. Oh, it was immense in that time. It was a busy, busy road. And then it slacked down to almost nothing. There was a period of time after the oil started running, and then there was a big layoff, and a lot of people left that time. And I was the only line driver in Fairbanks. for that there for one short period of time, and then things stabilized and started growing into what it is now, because it takes a lot of material to maintain that infrastructure of the whole industry of oil up there. It takes a lot of truckloads of everything, you name it, it's got to be trucked up there or flown. And no, I wouldn't go in trucking again because so many rules and regulations. It's just too much stuff. It used to be you had a driver's license, a little box of Band-Aids in the truck, and away you went. Not so. When I first started driving, you had to, trucks were different in old days, engines, figure out how to get one running, get out of the yard, and then you'd start learning how to drive. Now you can't do it. You got to have school, more school, mechanical type school, driving, the actual physical driving. I teach also, so. And paper, regulations. It drives me bats. I do something like you're doing. Yeah, I was there. We had good camps all the way up. It ranged from between 30 to 50 miles apart. You'd be a good camp with all the services you need, plenty of food, repair. You didn't take your truck in there as a scheduled repair, but a breakdown on the road, you could get a lot of help. Not so much in Prudhoe. Lots of plenty camps. They were good there, but repair was slight. Good food. And if you needed it, you could get in where it's warm if your truck gave up. The long-term Lynden, I think the key word in that, beyond good management, is teamwork. It doesn't matter if you're a vice president sitting there or if you're sweeping the dock. They think team, and that team is their strength. That's why they're here today. I've met his dad, and his dad's the one I bought a truck through, right? Yep. A horrible truck. You think trucks don't have souls? That truck had a bad soul. And most of my trucks have had neutral. There's some good, some bad. And the one I have now has a good soul. It hangs together through thick and thin, no matter what I do to it. 42 years. And I've been driving commercially 70, 80, I'm trying to think of when I started in 1953, commercial driving the big rigs, so whatever that comes out to. So that truck, over half my career, I've driven the same truck. Somebody mentioned the other day I must have known every bolt and rivet in it, and I do. 83 below, not very far from where recorded thermometer of 80 near pump 5, if people know where that is. Coldfoot had 83 one time. And don't go driving at 83. Air ride is supposed to be a nice, easy ride. Air ride at 83, those airbags are like steel. It's just, you're riding on a just piece of railroad iron. Ding, 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 ding. You better be careful because you're going to tear it up. The early part of the years is if you're driving a truck right, doesn't matter what your trailers are, your load, anywhere from 1 to 3 trailers. If you're driving it right, loading the engine down right, and doing everything right, it's like a symphony. If you can recognize that, you enjoy the driving. That's the personal end of it. And then you're sharing the road with like people. Your camaraderie is good. That isn't there so much now. It's a different world now, and everything is so speed and time conscious. And limitations because of insurance policies. Used to take riders up. People that were in there said, now you can do that, but you can't do it like you used to before. You got to jump through the hoops to do that. And because of that ham operator, I talked to people all the way around the world, and they'd come and visit here, and I'd take them up the Hall Road, and it's an experience they could experience. It's hard to do that kind of stuff anymore. We're all of us are more restricted to laws and rules as the population increases. No, that's from the beginning. You just go to work, and yeah, you can. There was no teaching done. Yeah, you might go around the block a couple times with somebody, and then you go out and figure out how to get the truck running. Get out of the yard so you can start learning. No radios, no, we had none of that, and you didn't have to worry about communications. And then even shutting an engine off, they had different ways to shut them off. You didn't just turn a switch. So you had to learn from scratch. And you didn't get much in the way of training. I learned to drive on a 1929 Chevrolet one-ton truck when I was a kid, and it evolved into what we have today. But there's more freedom in those days. Along with freedom goes responsibility. You're the one on the road dealing with it. You got to do what's necessary to get from point A to point B with your load. Not only your company, but your customers interested in that load. Now, you got communications. It's pretty hard to get away from communications, much as you'd like to. So you have a problem, you got somebody sitting in an office that's supposed to solve it for you. You didn't have that in the early days. Yeah, this is fun being an old geezer and this kind of stuff.